Who at the precipice of peace is hyper peace. Here Babayaros, ye Babayaros sees. At the precipice of peace is peace slash hyper peace, where the extent of nature's complete identity is discernible. That same one that is showing us its identity generating more of its trinity simultaneously as that solid individual body with the rest of itself that we cannot discern, but where and how the individual part of itself, like individual species bodies of individual bodies that are distinct individual species bodies. And each of the other species bodies are also made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. And they have group differences like two eyes and two sexes. In two ways, three parts of time, past, and the active connect, and the extent of like the value of the seasons that are not even here now, the value of it here now, even if they never get here again, how it is only increasing. It is showing, and everything is showing us nature's complete identity, not as all things, but while as them anyway. Many pray, vaccine. This is why how too. I could easily write a great Star Wars script. They should do that. It should have the guy who played like the dark or Darth Vader without a mask, Tyler Vaughn, I think is his name. They should make it like he was trying to be undercover in the dark side. By the way, my name is Anthony Wall. I completed a double major in communications and in English arts. And before and after the World Trade Center attack, my campus recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed from off the campuses, as the other campuses I went to and other people went to. It was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by the adults and kids next to the campuses. They were our force checked and persuaded to act and to have other people film fake things and make that up and put fake ties and nature's ties and transcripts at campuses, filmed 24/7. This is relative to the breaching method that has campuses A through Z sickly distinctly right and wrong, right where they are all, where the difference too as is played, right where and how other was communicated by James Madison and by plural founders that directed us to understand why and how they couldn't let us know their names, plural. They demonstrated, more than demonstrated, for us not to entertain, then pretended to be the people that were at the Declaration of Independence, or not, for certain. There was extortion behind everyone. Everyone was extorted and counter-extorted by James Madison's plan and the founders behind them. But if we pay attention, even the Native Americans against Native Americans before America's founders were even born, before Columbus even sailed the ocean blue, before religious messengers were even born, the identity of sophistication that revealed the republic for which we stand, America, had already become criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. By it forced collusion slash us from off the campuses that made and maintained, increasingly maintain, where there are databases not wanted by anyone, self-valued anyway, only permitted, like rules against all women, not just women's suffrage, against all women, all black people's whites of eyes, all natural communications, even where and how nature is constantly demonstrating the difference between itself only as criminal and citizen's nature, but not the way. But it's demonstrating us not to leave out why and how there's a witch trials place. next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. There and across the country, everyone has been kept incapable of appreciating American history properly because of how the breaching method is replaced with James Madison had to leave declassified for us to amend with his words and with everyone's words. He explained why and how nobody had free speech and everybody was only permitted to for a list of reasons to pretend other at the same time. And that was verified and as collusion /s, therefore increasingly physically, like with slavery, that nobody wanted roles with. All exceptions then and now are used tactically ulterior from how nature was is using it. And how our founders described it through James Madison. We were directed to understand why and how. He's the only founder, plural, that we know the name of for certain. So people say, so these are styles of defenses of modern countries A through Z, as Suchitai's Kara's exceptions. Oh, it's good or bad. Not good or bad in the difference in the breaching method uses on both sides of subject treatments, legal and criminal cases. Civil and criminal cases, and the interbranch of foreign as people with the foreign at the same time. Prepare the mind. It's also sometimes it's their families, the ones that are criminally foreign influenced. Sometimes it's the people that are asking them through the years. And the breaching method knew that would be discernible too. So it has them putting having people put it. Each year, they're putting more people and they're building upon things where they're putting people fake locations at all ages, including putting fake kids and adults at fake ties with crime scenes. As people recorded, then proven involved with it, but also the interbranch. Oh, but we were interbranch, we didn't know. There were abused since there were kids for this too. The forgiveness is because to discern the breaching method, we have to observe what is recorded over criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, international companies, news networks, name the intelligence there or next to them, their sources. At the same time, with the interbranch, all sides of the case, putting the same sequence shifts, the same delusions, the same forcing quality, fact, treatment, nature. Pretend debatable, that's not debatable. Right, like simultaneously pretending things are, not debatable, not true that are true all the way. We have black people's whites of eyes, for example. How we have two eyes across species bodies. That's science. That's about relativity / hyperrelativity. If you check, that's what computers are about. Each of the sciences has and has had their difference used remotely. And they have self-value roles with it, or that body was sensed, including if that body was a majority of people, including if it was everybody. So one of the things I want to donate, and we can make it imaginable, fathomable by others by using YouTube for it. We just organize it because it's all about video and people acting too. In other words, history was told what? Wrong. So I'm going to take into counter positions. You guys have to help me. Space means will come out of nowhere. Native Americans somewhere on YouTube say that we must read each other's dreams. And nature itself shows us that it is hyper-native pure. But it is a quality of fact treatment nature required. And not leaving out exceptions. Exception nature, not leaving out the difference, but it's constantly showing us the way it uses it. Because it's constantly showing us it is all volumes except for how it is not, but anyway. And that's what we are being shown too when we can discern people setting up fake exceptions. This is one of the things involved with predicate acts methods where interbranch families at countries A through Z, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, at the same time, with layers of other in the news. They have collusion/S with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations, being used to sense by the breaching method through layers and natures of other. Worse than just criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. Forgiveness is because this is what we can discern with black people's whites of eyes. Where and how we can discern the breaching method is where and how other things, others, ourselves, and all sides of arguments and exceptions have collusion/S that were and are being used remotely and have been. Because this is also relative to the revelations also replaced. And nature shows us that 2 eyes between species bodies and blindness. It is about how it is functional, being distinctly itself as the invisible but still discernible, and as the hyper invisible but still discernible, so to speak. But we must note that being having been one of the things that both the branches of government individually grouped in together with the witch trials, what's that about with American history? Again, next to Webb House with no love for it, and now the Webb Stevens Museum name, and then and now that location and locations across the country. They have other communicated for our founders, plural, who directed us to understand why and how they were a plural, and they had to force people there were more than 13 colonies entrenched, even with slavery rolls only permitted northern colonies, southern colonies. All laws against all women. Anyone wanted to speak up about it, found out going against it outside of internationally monitored conversations the way they wanted you to go about it, or the overt criminal enterprise, the private ones, the country, the international companies, the roles of all exceptions, even the news. Good people stay evil. Why? Because there was a breaching method entrenched through foundings. James Madison detailed about it. James Madison's plan and those plural founders enabled there to be a civil war. It forced having been a civil war. But fact-cheating nature, therefore physical possession of all identities of sophistication at countries A through Z. It never stopped having possession over their syntax, therefore their physics. This is why and is how all these natures of wealth at countries A through Z, not one of them, made possible what little kids know is engineering capable, way better than engineering now, and means capable. We have the suburbs that were designed by a torture, extortion, slavery method. If we step back, people are offensively needing to pretend they don't understand others. Relative, I could list a bunch of predicate acts. You guys have sense and sensibilities to need to have debate about positive or negative, dishonestly. Because every identity has relative to positive and negative, because you guys came through sick campuses. And when you guys are debating, you have reliance upon titles that have been forging names and switching names, but then you go fishing and bring your needs to bring your sensibilities up first. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, and their lawyer, Robert Chevrolet, and locations associated with him, like next to the state capitol. They have collusions with a whole bunch of different countries, like people with Korea involved with people named DeMoro and Mark Violet, and others all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut, and all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that. and their roles with the religious spots, also with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with victims advocates, with sexual medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic military, and their roles inter-campuses, intercities, with planting federal crimes on my street, and collusions with it intercities, with the campuses, including the Hartford Hospital, increasingly people at Trinity College. In other words, people from the class of 1993 will tell you this. They're being forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to pretend other too. Some of them, and they're educators, but they will tell you other too when you act properly. These are people that had investigators that spoke with them through the years, using that. Sometimes them, in some ways, constantly it's them. Sometimes constantly more and more it's the foreign countries involved with them and the people associated with them with their conversation. They're putting fake transcripts in databases still, and changing and faking digital evidences. These are people with whiting forensics involved increasingly with the FBI and various natures of federal criminals. With people like a Czech Casper, I never had a word of conversation with him in my life. He non-verbally confirmed collusions with a whole bunch of people that with the buildings next to the state capitol through time, and the timing of the reporting of Greg Kyler's reported murder. There were also probation officers and there are rules with town offices, intercities, and with people with the intelligence families and people tied to them. If they know their intelligence, who is or what, the difference of that is played too, like with the town lines through time. A number of people tied with the name Demorrow have a collusion slash S with a John Demorrow, with with various natures of courts and people with campuses, including with security guards and people with town lines, shopping centers and malls, and next to the state education department involves with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, people using investigators leaving out abuses of, including sexual and medical abuses of little kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders of them, uses of corners this is distinct natures of organized crime, and the difference of it, they have women judges involved with it. Because with the courts, family people with the hallway of the British Superior Court are increasingly people involved with organized crimes, planting evidence on my street, people tied to them. As ones involved too, where the Wethersfield Police Department is now, where it used to be, and use slash S of town lines and of town offices in the Wethersfield Community Center and communications locations. Increasingly too, people involved with the town offices and retired mayors and their family members, neighbors, and other natures of conjunctions to them, with the whiting forensics and a number of people with Facebook, also involved with interbranch federal evidences crimes, obfuscations of and World Trade Center predicate acts, and one since to hide it as collusion slash S with names associated with them since before they were Facebook. These are campuses involved as victims slash hyper victims, specifically to screen the motives per use slash S of them incapable being in state incapable of being a quality of fact treatment nature necessary to handle any subject treatment properly at the location slash S. It is recorded how this was perpetrated. Central Connecticut State University has a number of fire departments that they're going to be continually confessing about if you don't get them on paper with the Detective Samuda. There are people tied to a Detective Samuda that have rules with sexual and medical offenders of kids. And I never had a word of conversation with him in my life. There also are people that have worlds of wire crimes and Heather Hansen. They forced, tricked her and persuaded her to roles that she knows is at least fathomable. And per their roles, John Demorrow will court confess, demonstrate, confirm she's one of the ones involved with Judge Smith, too, said that he's had these people tied to them, have roles with this. And a Mr. Abruzzi was brought up at Central Connecticut State University, was also confirmations of confessions made to me by people at my grammar school before and after I was in Mr. Pruzzi's class. And these are people I never had a conversation with at all. I never spoke with them at all when I had them as a teacher. They were used to plant that with kids that were used to come and make confessions, like and make it look like I knew them before I did. And ones I don't even know at all, like try to make it look like they know you. And then these are people that are doing that with databases too. Since before computers, there's a method by this /s. And so this is also interstate, not just, but it's not just international. Wethersfield police attached me to fake conversations with themselves and being at the police station and speaking with themselves as a kid and as an adult. And they have a bunch of people involved with the FBI Director Robert Luskin and home break-ins in my area when I was a kid and an adult. And you/his have been recorded hyper additional tied to that. Increasingly, I don't know where Fred Grisey is one of the ones I found out the name of, who sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. I never saw him around people in my area. But he recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has roles with criminally foreign influence uses of databases and of campuses by many men and women also involved in next to the campuses, intercities and interstates, with people also with other countries, overt criminal enterprises and private ones. These are not legitimate roles with intelligence and with the departments of the campuses, including the acting department at Central Connecticut State University, is also collusions with the FBI, with WTNH. They are next to them. And their sources are recorded involved, like with people named, they'll tell you. There are also people recorded increasingly with former mayors, with sexual medical offenders of kids, and then pretending to be against such as collusion/s, including women, to force quality of action nature where the courts and prisons, like Sandy Hook Prison, has collusions intercities with people named Cololo and Ray, per them, and O'Brien, rather. There's a Phil Cololo involved with the Bob Chase with Whiting Forensics, also with LinkedIn, involved with multiple agencies, between putting posts between. They're trying to mess with YouTube too. And they have Judge Napolitano's Sense and Sensibility used remotely with Fox News, preventing mandated law, enforcing, sensing for the breaching method. They have roles with a whole bunch of natures of organized crimes, not legitimately. They're also confessing that, because I don't know them at all. And they try to make fake exceptions with the ones involved with the courts, prosecutors, and judges, and their family members, involved with the Rick Sanfaglione, involved with the Leahy family, and a number of other families at Hartford Hospital who have collusions with the Cololo family and the DeMoro family, and others with the home break-ins with the DeMoro family, and the girls that were abused also to keep their mouth shut about parts of things. And as ones involved with families involved with overt criminal enterprise, private ones. A Kerr family I only know planting evidences with on and off campuses behind people's backs, so they'll never get. And they've been building upon that. These are also collusions with the Brit Superior Court, Hartford courts, before and after the World Trade Center attack. They have collusions with crime scenes, intercities, and further hyper additionally with people with the state judicial branch office, corrections offices. There's also remote uses of people's differences, including interbranch. They don't have the sense and sensibilities to be able to be capable even of dealing with, honestly or sanely, why and how we have black people's rights of eyes and revelations generated with this and other things simultaneously / hyper simultaneously manifest. So to speak, we could put the word hyper before any word as a means to appreciate further the rest, to the extent of nature's complete identity that we can discern by correlation / hypercorrelation, which is really what this is about. Not just life, death, and the difference is its own. the difference of that one identity of volume that is no other volume, while it is all anyway, even if something is made up, like art. It is distinctly the word of the finite, or the value of the finite details, or the grouped or active, or the simultaneous and or progressive, relative to its volume slash hypervolume science. English was revealed to be taught this way. Here many pray, boxings. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are grouped by nature itself. Shows us more probably and demonstrably how the sciences were first revealed. In Legion, hear its name. More probably it was revealed inside of tribes. In less than. in other words, before the sciences, nature shows us that it is more probable and demonstrable how before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced from off their location /s. Therefore, their syntax no longer capable of being discerning. Discernment /s by nature unabridged, as appreciated, where the names of the people of the sciences, to use a phrase from the Old Testament too, one right where it says in the Old Testament, only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. The only reason that no one ever heard that is because people have to pretend they didn't realize that they were and are had been used remotely as factually nature by others. This is also fake for everyone. What they actually communicate and say is faked and changed for everyone too. All it needs at countries A through Z are styles. You guys aren't supposed to change and fake what people say about how Channel 3 News faked conversations with me, enticed me when I was a kid and when I was an adult, and about the World Trade Center attack, and while they forced the principal child abuser, and how they have been making confessions ever since. They can't help it. I can, in other words, the police recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed with the courts and writing forensics. They have digital crimes with them too. So that's why I'm needing to communicate with them here. Everyone wants to have an aside. There's like an aside syndrome. Everyone wants and needs to speak in backgrounds where everyone can change and fake what's actually recorded. In other words, they had words at all with Trantolo and Trantolo, and with a woman who works for them. They have rules on pretending people with courts that direct people to pretend they have to sue them to get rights, where they break people's rights that are too numerous to have to list. They have rules with all kinds of natures of organized crimes too, and the foreign bodies, but also overt criminal enterprises, private ones. The same way our founder communicated about this. See, no one could afford to have that discern now, because there are still some styles and logic, natures of logic, like by the value of, jobs. I just watched on YouTube somewhere the other day. There was a serial killer just speaking about how, I think it was someone who killed his father, speaking about how he's a good worker. You guys have your minds assigned to contemplate through an system's tactical ulterior than the Constitution's unabridged and James Madison, as he directed us to appreciate himself and his words. Also through that which was declassified demonstrably. They wanted nothing to do with slavery, and we don't know their names. We have the people who are the names of the people, the experts on American history, have been using their knowledge of good and evil and about names and instances to get over on correlation nature, while at the same time the counters to them have been collusion /s. Forgiveness is because that was his only permitted. Otherwise, that body was his sense, and it was his adapted to. And there is a method /s that they've been using with fact-checking nature that's recorded But you guys are not allowing people to speak about how it's recorded because you, including the interbranch, had time collusions with all that came before them, including a Hartford hospital and hospitals there are proof, other hospitals too, and involved with them through time with predicate acts to other locations, with other natures of organized crimes, with the businesses and houses next to them, as ones involved with the World Trade Center predicate acts with them too, and relative delusions. No one stepped back. They have criminally foreign influence, wild tactically delusions, wrought takes on principles with American history. It would have brought up with James Madison declassified. They have roles. They have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, all kind of natures of organized crime, wire crime methods, stealing. That's worse than stealing. They owe more than we need, while they're wasting all kinds of and then calling it health care. Whole bunch of people tied intelligence, recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. There's a Gary Sasso also involved with various courts and networks and intelligence agencies involved with organized crimes and with federal evidences crimes and with people in part of some of them are about drugs, medicines, crimes, and identity theft, federal evidences crimes, collusions with the crime scenes and with people from my grammar school, increasingly collusions with people with schools I went before that and after that. Rick Cianfaglione said there's a Harris family was influenced. A Harris family is involved with a Brian Silver with the Britain Superior Court, and others with the Britain Superior Court that know my name. I don't know their name, etc. All exception. They're putting fake things in the databases there with people that were involved with the World Trade Center attack, intercities and intra-cities, and inter-campuses and intra-campuses. And it should not be hard for you guys to fathom such is manifest, nor your collusion/s changing and faking what I said about such. In other words, we're not, you guys are then you go fishing. Oh, I couldn't believe it about the former print former Wethersfield police chiefs and their intimate ties. They have a number of collusion/s with people with the same house and where they moved from the family in there, involved with the new police, the longtime police chief. I don't know who the new police chief is, but there are some Mendes police too. One, the older one, pretended I never had a word of conversation with him in my life. I only know him through others. Now I even know who told me that, and he walked by smiling. Also, a Leahy family has collusion/s with that, and they fake transcripts of me too at Hartford Hospital, and with multiple police forms and people associated with a Rick Cianfaglione also make confessions about that. And he has collusions with houses and businesses next to there, like a Mayano family is involved with sequence shifts with them. I never hung around with them. They had a Rick Cianfaglione standing next to the front door. It just looked like he was directed to move his arm like that by someone. And someone that's trying to make me look like I'm tied to a Paul Zano too with grammar school. And then like right when we were walking into the thing, they all things set up. Increasingly, they've been planting evidences with people that have been slandering me intercities that were involved with my freshman class. I didn't even go. I didn't even know the people at the freshman class. And the other kids recorded themselves with all sides of criminal and civil cases, collusion/s and with the crime scenes with a whole bunch of other countries. And increasingly people with the state judicial branch offices, corrections offices, and tied to databases with all ages of people, with their scams on them, only capable of being where they are supposed to be experts, names of the people, the sciences, that have a lot of quality of fact sheet nature, not using names of in other words. Oh, well, you're speaking about hearsay and want to go into debate about that because they know some things about hearsay. They're playing games where he said, she said, they're needing to hide where they have roles with investigators, all ages and natures of their families, have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought. There is a Jennifer Connecticut is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by adults and kids, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be collusions with people with the corners of streets, of a principal child abuser's campus. I never had a class with her in my life. Increasingly, people involved with a former mayor Gold and other mayors, in conjunctions to them, have collusions with all kinds of medical corruption. Also with WFSB. WFSB says they have a bunch of people involved with WFSB with identity theft frauds, putting fake ties to doctors with little kids and with adults. They're putting fake transcripts in databases. Those same ones, foreign and domestic, are involved with the judges, prosecutors, and victims advocates, have collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, who have time collusions with investigators. Well, they're going to ask you about this because this happened, but they're going to use that to leave out, to measure and maintain left out how they were abused and how it was exploited at other locations. Increasingly, people from the other towns and campuses were influenced by people that were at my campuses, that were influenced by people from off the campus. In other words, ones I didn't even have classes with, never saw around, increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Two, the teacher had made me stay back. It was to hide that. Increasingly, a Casper family is involved with that, and people from Washington, D.C., and all along Route 175, further involved with use/s of all kinds of criminally foreign influence uses of databases, but also how exploited at other locations as hyper additional collusion/s, only capable of being to maintain, really why and how. That we're still being charged for things that we shouldn't even be charged for. We're really why and how. The designs of there were houses still standing that were built before America's founders were born. There were only permitted with torture, extortion, and slavery, and leaving out the breaching methods roles with it. Even though nature demonstrates that all those multi-front civil rights impositions and that America was founded and were born. Nature represents that what they were all about at the same time was a human faction. Nature breaching method was entrenched too deeply and above all the head beyond the heights that any modern country could attain right through their founding/s. We have means to discern how it was entrenched here. But we have the experts blamed other guys. You can't even explain the Civil War legitimately. You can't explain the Civil Revolution. The revolution, James Madison's and the plural founders forced there to be a unity and simultaneously an identity of independence, of a new nature from that of the countries A through Z, not as our own still too. Systems, tactical, military, all forced, ourselves and that other people too. But everyone leaving out how the breaching method forced it. This is more probably and is more sanely how to describe what the modern religions were about. You guys can't afford to be honest about the part that says only defend right here, the part that comes before it, or the part that comes after it, like with the tree of knowledge of life and good and evil. Then you want to go into ghosts and things like that first, out of sequence. You want to keep the nature of debate, but things to pretend to debatable or not. You guys are insane. At countries A through Z, because you came through 6 campuses, A through Z. The best one and the worst one too. The difference is used remotely by the breaching method. But everything the breaching method did through our own and does through our own at A through Z, to keep the hyperforensic trail, for example, so to speak, identity relationship to itself, being demonstrated by nature itself. Instead, with those demonstrations used by the breaching method to show collusion/s and needs for individuals preemptively, actively, and increasingly to blame other people, other things, ourselves. A Perone family was influenced to seek me out and make fake exception to make it look other too, to make it look like it's debatable. And a family across the street from their house, Mr. Abruzzi, of I never had a word of conversation with I don't even a girl that was only saw her one time walk by when I was supposed to fight a Joe DeMoro in 5th grade. Aaron, I don't know. She's a nice girl. In other words, but these are people involved also with former Mayor Gold. And there's a Nick Vandercone. I never had a word of conversation with him. One time I could not stop laughing. Only reason I went because John Mountain sought me out to make confessions and demonstrations to me. And he didn't know the extent of it. But it's tied to his roles of people who broke my car. There are proofs. Anyway, it's what part of his roles with sequence shifts. And people who have roles of various natures of federal crimes on my street. And with people that are tied to him and where he lives. And the locations associated with him and his family. A Jonathan Maiano. A bunch of people involved too with the court, New Britain Superior Court, with sexual medical offenders with them, and with the Kerr family. Is also involved with Officer Jerry Miller and other people. I don't know which one is the Mike, but there's more than one Mike involved. There's a Mike Demain, a Mike Pandolf, a Mike Roberts, all people involved with the state judicial branch offices and federal evidence crimes on my street and with the phones with them. And sequence shifts. And people involved with Washington, D.C. and New York's the World Trade Center who also have collusion /S with self-value, uses self-value, right? We know when self-values it. With all sides of criminal and civil cases. And interbranch and foreign at the same time with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, and terrorists. At the same time with the news, too. With the same sequence shift self-value. The same federal evidences, appreciation. Racketeering worse than war crimes. Relativity. /S2 to where to how. Black people's rights of eyes have been left out, even though nature uses it to show us things about the breaching method, how it used black and white with the law syntax, how it used those laws against all women, against all native sickly distinctly. Everyone, all natures of help to all the things that it caused and that nature causes. All natures of strength, all natures of weakness. Appreciated syntactically, tactically ulterior from how nature shows us too. Nature shows us both sides of things in the difference as its own. Nature shows us how it is functional, how it is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. The rest of its complete identity of relationship to itself, and only increasing value of that. Attached to its parts, individually grouped and together as it shows us. Here, species body of individual bodies. All group differences are generated by nature's identity, its identity relationship to itself, and to a special difference concentrated here at Earth. Or if we can all ignore this together individually, it will just demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Again, however, those being and having been assigned by the breaching method that stayed entrenched through modern nations as a hyper sophistication that has nothing, can't be measured through wealth, etc. This thing was already entrenched. This thing already had the voices of all groupings of countries used remotely even easier than we could observe. Just having black people's rights of eyes. Only theater knows how to speak, so we have forgiveness. We let them get away with it. Plus, it's the differences of guilt, so we don't address only one side of it. The people defending our founders for slavery roles, they're lying about our founders. Exactly the way they knew they would be. That's why we're directed to not entertain anyone pretend that our founders, plural, no, besides James Madison, Anyone doing that and having done that can't tell about the Declaration of Independence properly. They are being used to measure and maintain and sense for a breaching method. But the breaching method is doing that through other natures of roles, from off Wethersfield, and from off the federal, where there are federal trying to counter things, and states trying to counter things, right where and how the differences of their guilt was is used remotely too, in ways they already had used remotely self-valued, relative to logic at basic, primary education levels, principal treatments. In other words, measurement of intelligence. See, there are games that are leaving out the organized crimes, and where and how the best intelligence is going to ignore details with the class. To appreciate roles with the breaching method, replacing what both nature and what our founders communicated, actually. And we could observe the styles pretending other and using their knowledge of good and evil to get over on correlation nature as sequence shifting styles. It would have brought this up. Please. And so I wrote wicked bad script to make because I didn't want to give them, in other words, with the counter scripts I wrote on Facebook and between social medias with a recreation of the American Revolution American Revolution in the movie script, but in Old Wethersfield, where they do that, and in the script, I start giving a speech out of nowhere with a podium I put up, and in the speech, people start realizing, where they had collusions against each other, where they're fake and pretending other, and where that is exploited by other/s. And this is oftentimes where there's violence tied to it, because they keep other things, others, or selves blamed for the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and nature, which is only one of the things we're going to be observing relative to this. And to make it observable to Americans, and to make it, in other words, any sane or honest science body or voice capable of speaking for America's parts all at once. They have to be able to speak from all at once, grouped differences and the finite. All ones honestly, otherwise they can't be afford to have to have discerned the value of why and how we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged, and defense of our founders, why and how they couldn't allow us to know their names, why and how they need that known, and why and how that James Madison is the only name that they all want to be called. In other words, we have to understand that. We have to understand what had slavery entrenched. No one's like, you don't vote on slavery and then pretend you can be a vote. And then we look at the other nation. That's what we're supposed to fight to be apart from. We can't be apart from the NP. That's why we're trying to negotiate. You guys are pretending that we're not supposed to negotiate. You can't be honest about that and take a look at New York City. The suburbs were designed tactically denatured for people who need food from other locations. The value, the breaching methods roles left out, even though it's inseparable from every detail, every subject, at every location/s. Many ways I tell it best. And a Kerr family has the perpendicular streets to its own, at more Meadowgate, involved with people too, with the former mayors and with people with Nassau for them, and try to make a fake exception, make it look like I know the people with the doorbell, and then they step back and make it look like I'm the one going there. I don't even know that person's name, and those are people with the sides of one of the religious spots, involved with child abusers, leaders of kids at campuses, with the religious spots also involved. But it's also with the interbranch involved, and as one's involved with a whole bunch of other countries that work criminal enterprise at the same time. They are not legitimately with the military, a Kerr family. Get them on paper with the name and sequence shifting. New Britain Superior Court when I was a kid, now I was an adult. A Subby Bajero too. I never had a conversation with him in my life. He tried to make. I never saw him on the inside of a campus in my life either. They tried to make. He was influenced to make a fake exception, make it look like other, by asking me if I wanted to buy a coat for $20. Now I did that. He recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through communications. He has collusions with a Judge Smith and with some of the prosecutors and with people tied to him who made confessions about their roles with him, with various home break-ins and car thefts, including against my own, with the people tied to him. And he's like a skinny little kid. He's like a fake with the people next to Central Connecticut State University influenced him to pretend other with them. That's in New Britain, Connecticut. This Subby Bajero has roles inter and intra-cities with people also, per people tied to him, with the and per him, with the state Wethersfield, with the Wethersfield Community Center, is increasingly too. People with the Wethersfield town offices involved with some murders and body dumping spots years apart, and people involved with educators I had, who try to make it look like I had conversations with them, like a Mr. Neville. And I don't know if he did or not. I'm trying to pretend I communicated with him. He had to hide. The only sentence I asked him about why he didn't give me back my ball. He's not. He has something to do with his roles with a whole bunch of people from other countries and people from Puerto Rico, where he used to live on Route 3, and next to it, and conjunctions to it and to that. Mr. Neville. And his roles with people next to Trinity College and Hartford Hospital, and as one's also with Hartford Hospital families, with the same house/nest next to me, with the name we're tied to a Phil Colo, and he was swerving his bike. The only time I ever saw him on my street outside of a car, I'm not even sure if I saw him was actually him in a car ever on my street in my entire life. I never saw him on the inside of a campus too, or on the outside of it, but one time from a distance. They're trying to make a fake exception for the future. He was being handed a gold watch from my principal, who they abused the kids of the principals too, through time, to keep themselves by inclusion. Everyone's forcing everyone to speak through others, because this preaching method knows only individuals can speak for the law. I only know that Paul Zano has collusions with a Mark Cianfaglione and a Rick Cianfaglione, with courts and with various police forms. And that's what, in other words, I was the only time I saw him on campus, and they tried to make a fake exception with a math class. I never had one word of conversation with Paul Zano in that class. I don't even think with Ray Cole at all. And the whole time there's a Stephen Stocko. They were just harassing him in the class. And they wanted me to jump in for that. If I jumped in one time, these are people that were covering cover-ups, because they have collusions with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, sexual and medical offenders of kids, with various natures of courts too. Probate courts, the district court, and the New Britain Superior Court, Hartford courts. They have collusions with the same house since they were kids. And with this O'Brien family, with Sandy Hook campuses, and more people involved with the Lanza family, and with other abuses against all the kids at Sandy Hook, and everyone forced to speak through others is worse than groupthink is involved. So Sandy Hook intelligence too. They have syntax with the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices. We have collusions with uses of the syntax of Alex Jones and of Sandy Hook Promise voices, and with the campuses. There's a prison too at Sandy Hook. They have collusions with the principal child abuser, with multiple campuses and police forms intercities. They have the names Cololo and O'Brien also confessed by them at Sandy Hook. And Whiting Forensics has a Phil Cololo involved with the Bob Chase's confessions. and demonstrations as leaking on LinkedIn and other social media. They have digital crimes with sexual medical offenders of kids, leaders of them force, also digital. They also have drugs crimes and relative delusions and collusions with the same house slash S when I was a kid. And before they arrested me when I caught them with forcing a principal child abuser with other natures of organized crimes and their own kids, collusion slash S. I am the sources and news of the news themselves, fake conversation ties to me, and their sources. And one time I was there like really really short. I had no drinks at all. A Ray Cole told me to hold his cup, and he's involved with and that's the only time I ever saw him with a Daryl Chandler. A Daryl Chandler has roles. I don't know his family has family members with intelligence apparently. But I never met his sister or whatever. Reportedly, she has roles with the spots intercities and intra cities through time. And there's a roommate of a Ray Colal, reportedly his roommate reportedly in Newington, who's increasingly collusions with people next to Fox Connecticut News and with people from the class of 1993 and before it who are repeating fake things and have collusions with the World Trade Center attack with our side's roles, all natures of organized crimes with it, and with Washington D.C. those same names. Two speech class teachers I have a bunch of recorded ties to people involved with home break-ins in my area years ago, and more recently, and use slash S of it recorded. And per the syntax of a guy the guy who said he was a detective who was a partner of a Kevin Dillon. I never had a word of a conversation with Kevin Dillon. Kevin Dillon's also further with some Mendez police and people that came and had roles with the home break-ins and wire crimes with the police and other predicate acts with them, and with sexual and medical offenders of kids. And they make rape threats, and these are the ones that were involved with confessions tied to this too, right through New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page. Then they made a whole bunch of other Facebook pages to make it look like there were proof said they were directed to do that too, to make it look like it was a passion crime or whatever, because they had before the World Trade Center attack. They had affected, there was no charges on me or anything like that. They affected all kinds of confessions to me with people from that went to my grammar school that I never had classes with. And like Justin Kovinskis, I never saw him on a campus. The only quick exception is he was confirmed like before I graduated, and he wasn't even in my class. Some girl that went to my grammar school that was never in a class with me is one of the ones involved with the former Mayor Gold and some detectives' families and other police forms, including former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, who have time collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones of various natures of federal criminals and their family members, who are recorded too, collusion slash S with databases at campuses of all ages and natures. Increasingly, as the Morrow family recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, there's a Finelli family, like family members. I never had a word of conversation with a mother of a John DeMorrow and a Joe DeMorrow. And a Paul DeMorrow, the only conversation I ever had with him was over the phone. He has an extent, it's recorded, his more than plausible, he has an extent of awareness of his collusion slash S with a John DeMorrow with various natures of organized crimes and with federal evidences crimes rackets with interbranch foreign and domestic military too are involved further. I don't want to go into more names further. These are further people involved with the Elm Streets and Rocky Hill and Wethersfield law. Has something to do with their roles with Valley Crest Street, conjunctions to it and to that, and Morgan Circle, and people who have been planting evidence on all sides of my house, also with fire department that won't identify themselves legitimately with an Inspector Mike. That's because they're also involved with an Inspector Mike, with a Mike Del Ferro, with a probate judge's family members, with various natures. Well, I only know two of their brothers' names and never saw my campuses. They're involved with people that were putting fake things in databases behind people's backs and planting evidences with the intelligence families that they lived near me. Never saw them in my area in my life. Their recorded capacity demonstrated confirmed involved with town lines and with the side entrance to shopping center with a Mike Levine, who's also brought up by the syntax of a principal upskirt nature who had worlds with way worse abuses of kids and organized crimes. Also with interbranch forging and switching names and refusing to get on paper because part of it involves those families there, collusions with their own kids. And having stacked since before they were there, they had collusions with stacked fake things and fake transcripts, fake changed evidences, collusions, all nature of crime scenes originally and still. That's part of the reason they can't afford to have discerned what is actually recorded, proper to be communicated at locations A through Z, including and hyper additionally the founding locations. Nations, each entrenched is the breaching method. Beseeched, each. Babayaros, Babayaros sees. Don't be Babayaros. Don't be Badios. Don't be. Don't make me say Badio. If someone says, like, F you or says it out, the swear word, you say, Bayo. And that's a word, because now it's not a disgusting thing, but it is a swear word. And everyone goes, oh, but now you outrank them too because you're also classy. See, Babayaros is hyper positive. Babayaros is, and Babayarosis is Bayos without the two B. Okay, we'll learn. See, that's also what I want to have YouTube ground videos about, where we mean stack into the the interface with New York City and the algorithm /S enlists appreciation. See, this programming method that nature shows us to appreciates lists in ways that the people that have been appreciating programming and the names of the people of sciences can't afford to have short words. Use correlation, by the way, by the means we have by it. There are proofs that just with the little I know about how computers work, I could explain how it works real fast and better. Even though I'll tell it's part of the reason why and how is because they can't afford to have discerned how it's about relativity / hyperrelativity. Even though I could say that ahead of time, they still won't be able to tell properly. Because criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments and negative or negative treatments or the difference have been valued, where subject treatments are valued. And there are fact treatment nature quality aspects in nature to that. And that was his collusion /S. Two, with this breaching method propagated people to speak about their motives and about how and why they don't want things. But that's just how things are. Like with the black pupils, whites of eyes. That's because you guys don't listen to what Unabridged tells you. By nature and by James Madison. You want readings, indeed readings of the law, leaving out what he declassified and why and how he had to. You guys have appreciations of him. And then you need to be styles that, we just want to be positive or negative. It's about positive and negative simultaneously. It's not about positive hiding and changing how a breaching method for slavery, and people are pretending they don't want to bring it up because it's debatable. Because they want to keep other people, others, ourselves, including our founders, framed for slavery even, in our faces. And that has been sustained. Oh, well, people, this how legislation goes, it's either this or this, and this is the number we need. You guys put physics, you guys are sick. Allow nature itself to bring me that itself. So in one of the Little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons, there's Seth and Reeves are depicted apart with their counter extortion and roles cultivating the counter extortion of New York City, of Hartford, and the neighboring suburbs and nations in Little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons. But it's just like why and how. Countries A through Z have been doing the same thing. Our founders, again, they directed us to understand why and how they did not have free speech. And to the extent everybody did, it was an extent where they had to fake. It was an extent /s where it had to be faked free speech. They had to leave out exceptions, exception, nature, use, /7, the difference of that. All natures of agreements, all natures of negotiations, all natures of database relativity, databases, relativity /relativities to A through Z. Names, locations, the hyper additionally names, the hyper additionally location /s. Collusion /s only permitted. This is a method that has even a king or a pharaoh only permitted to entertain quality aspects in nature of locations, areas, and states below them, being and having been to an extent used remotely, criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence. The difference between the criminal insidiousness nature, bottom up or top down, that difference is also used by this preaching method. If we step back, discern. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are grouped a part of where and how nature shows us that its identity is what is the complete identity of any of the sciences. They share its identity. Vaccine. So we just make this cartoon. Who disbelieves, and we will stack the means. In other words, we have means that will come out of nowhere. If we all organize it and it's all set up, and so no one's going to get hurt, and it's going to be everyone's going to be positive, even while they're traveling to places, you guys are going to have to learn math in new ways. You're gonna have to learn English because you guys left out. You guys left out a quality of fact achieving nature capable of discerning how a predicate act and how a predicate have relativity / hyperrelativity, how it is functional for nature, where how the sciences appear not to share an identity, but they do anyway. Many ways. I tell it best. Boxings, American history, nature of English grammar, and communication / hypercommunication. So much more. Even though I'm not a lawyer. It's recorded, you have to entertain criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought, American history, principle treatments, legal principle treatments to become a lawyer. You guys need to pay attention. There's offensive theft of and sabotage of our premises. They do it even to leaders, sickly, distinctly too, because the difference is exploited too, where people appreciate things, including ignoring. That's how they leak too. Then they pretend other by fishing with what was said, changing and faking. I reported predicate acts to you. Get me off fake conversations with the news about the World Trade Center attack and fake locations with themselves and with others. Pretended. And they did this to kids too, ones I don't even know. But I know that they did that to them. And they're using the rights to life to parents where they don't have the right to lie. They're also involving houses on all sides of everyone, and the same thing against those houses. They're keeping people's sense and sensibility incapable of affording discern what's recorded regarding, like, for example, all the, this is not against Koreans, South Koreans, or, I have love for them simply. I mean, I have loved them distinctly because we are names A through Z of the human species body now as systems tactical ulterior. And it's because there's another name with A through Z that's keeping us needing to say good things about each other or bad things the way it needs, leaving out itself in roles with the syntax here and there. I don't even know their names. They know my name. The Koreans associated with this Daryl Chandler, and I was barely there. I never partied too, for his language party. A Joshua Julian, as one of the ones with the Facebook page of a principal upskirt nature. Even if that was made up, I recorded them collusions with him with way worse. And people on my street tied to other people like a Phil Cole further involved with that also. They also recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirm he's involved with it. A Joshua Julian. Never saw him on my street in my life. He was threatening me and said he was spying on me in my house. And he noted how I keep a crack in my garage door sometimes. In other words, I don't know where he lives. And reportedly he has roles interstates. He has people with 3 spots at the end of the Bone Turnpike. A Joshua Schumack and his mother have roles with Wethersfield Police Department with some sexual and medical offenders of kids too, per a Mark Violet and others with victims advocates, also collusions with them, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and their roles with Elm Streets and Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, with the state judicial branch officers, and all along Route 3 in conjunctions to it and to that, like Ridge Road. And increasingly, these are people that use the record. They're people from other parts of town and Wethersfield too. That say that the intelligence families have people say things, make you use their name, and then they lie about why you're using their name. And they did this with the news too, faking ties to me, fake nature ties to me, because they were abused when they were kids. Two times I had a speech class, a cooking class. They exploited those teachers by putting 2 people in the classroom, connected them to predicate acts with names and syntax on all sides of my house. And then people that were I never even saw on my street. And increasingly, their roles with that used that exploited at their roles with Elm Streets too, and the roots. And the differences. These are some people with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, with a Mark Violet, and also his roles with a Perone family, with town lines, and people planting evidences, and roles with the use/s of all the ages and natures of investigations. Investigators use remotely criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought. A bunch of people with UConn also have collusion/s with the Zano family. That has roles with this Steven Sacco. I was never a part with their conversation with them as harassing him straight through that math class. I never took part with it. And he's reportedly married to, I don't even know if it's true, he's reportedly married to Maria Pizzino. Also, there are people, there's a Kevin Carone and a Mark Carone. There are also ones involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, per Mark Violet and the Perone family, and others involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids, and the people in the Brit Superior Court, and the people who brought up I never even met those people too. No, I'm sick of people using people's names I don't even know too, and they're bringing up like with the Jennifer Kennepicky and some John Laurie, and a corner of a street there is increasingly involved with the Leahy family with multiple interstates, triages, in their roles with identity theft, fraud, federal evidences crimes, through others that force them to collusions with themselves. Everyone forced to speak through others. Get them the heck on paper, please. People above and below the grade of 1993 will tell you, will confirm things to you that will demonstrate their roles with the World Trade Center attack. Wethersfield police also faked evidences with Saudis and with the WTNH and the British Superior Court, Hartford courts, their families and intimate ties before and after the World Trade Center attack. They have collusions also with the depositions, people associated with all sides of criminal civil cases and depositions, including of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, their family members, their neighbors, their lawyer, also collusions with kids at campuses I went and at other locations /s. Get them on paper.